I didn't think my marriage was in trouble. Not really. I mean, we weren't perfect, but we were. Fine. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Until Mother's Day. Because that morning, no one said anything. No Happy Mother's Day. No smile. Nothing. And I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking, that it didn't matter. But then, he looked at me, really looked at me, and said something I don't think I'll ever forget. You're not my mother. Why would I do anything for you? And just like that, everything I thought I understood about my marriage started to fall apart. That morning started like any other. No noise, no rush, just quiet. I woke up around 8, the same time I always do on weekends. The house felt still, comfortable even. For a second, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting. Not for anything big, just something. But nothing came. No voice from downstairs. No footsteps rushing in. No Happy Mother's Day. So I got up. I told myself it didn't matter. I threw on a sweater, tied my hair back, and headed downstairs like I always do. The kitchen looked exactly the same. Last night's dishes still in the sink, the faint smell of coffee, but not fresh. I started moving on autopilot. Laundry first. I grabbed the basket, sorted through clothes, loaded the machine. The familiar hum kicked in, filling the silence. Then breakfast. Eggs. Toast. Nothing special. I moved around the kitchen quietly, almost instinctively, like my body already knew the routine better than I did. My husband was already up, sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. I glanced at him just for a second, waiting for eye contact. He didn't look up, just kept scrolling. "Morning," I said. "Morning," he replied. That was it. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, like I was expecting something else to follow. But it didn't. So I turned back to the stove, kept cooking, kept moving, kept pretending everything felt normal. After breakfast, I cleared the plates, wiped down the counters, started prepping lunch early, a roast in the oven, something easy, something expected. Meanwhile, he was still on his phone, occasionally muttering something about car listings, trying to find a replacement for our son's car that broke down a few days ago. I nodded along when he spoke, gave short answers. But in the back of my mind, there was this quiet thought. Okay, maybe they're planning something later. Maybe this was part of it. Maybe they were waiting. Maybe I just needed to be patient. I didn't need anything big. No gifts. No grand gestures. Just acknowledgement. A simple, "Hey, we see you." But as the morning kept going and nothing changed, that quiet feeling in my chest started to grow. Not loud, not dramatic, just there. Like something was slightly off, like a note in a song that didn't quite belong. And no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. By the time it hit around 1 in the afternoon, the house felt heavier. Not loud, not chaotic, just off. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, it's uncomfortable. I'd been moving all morning. Laundry done, breakfast cleaned up, lunch already in the oven, everything taken care of. Like always, and still nothing. No card sitting on the counter. No last minute, "Oh, I almost forgot." Not even a joke about it. Just a normal day. And I kept telling myself, it's fine. It doesn't matter. You're overthinking this. But there was this small voice in the back of my mind that wouldn't shut up. They really didn't remember, did they? So I decided I was going to take a break. Just a small one, nothing dramatic. I went upstairs, grabbed my things, and set them out on the bathroom counter. Tweezers, dye kit, cotton pads. Something simple. Something just for me. And as I stood there looking at my reflection, I remember thinking, this is fine. I don't need anything from anyone else today. I just needed an hour. An hour where I wasn't cooking, cleaning, or doing something for someone else. An hour where I could just exist. I had just started opening the dye kit when I heard his voice from downstairs. Hey! I paused. Waited. Can you come down here for a second? I closed my eyes for a moment. Just breathing. Then I walked downstairs. He was still on the couch. Phone in hand. Our son was next to him, looking at a laptop. Insurance quotes. Of course. We need help with this, he said, not even looking up. I glanced at the screen, then back at him. I'm in the middle of something, I said, keeping my voice calm. I'll come down in a bit. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't urgent. It could wait. But instead, he sighed, loudly, and then finally looked at me. No, you need to come now. There was something in his tone. Sharp, dismissive. Like what I was doing didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. And for a second, I just stood there. Because suddenly, everything clicked into place. The quiet morning, the lack of acknowledgement, the way no one had said anything all day. Not him, not my son, no one. And I felt it. That shift. Small, but undeniable. Like something inside me finally gave way. Not loud, not explosive. Just a crack. Because it wasn't just about that moment. It was about the realization that maybe this wasn't an accident. Maybe this was exactly how they saw me. Someone who just keeps things running. Who doesn't need to be thanked? Who doesn't need to be seen? And standing there in the middle of the room, I realized something that hurt more than I expected. I wasn't asking for much. Not a gift. Not a big gesture. Just acknowledgement. And somehow, that was still too much. So I said it. I didn't plan to. It just came out. Honestly, you're both being really inconsiderate. The words hung in the air longer than I expected. My son looked up from the laptop, confused. My husband didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, and for a split second, I thought maybe he'd get it. Maybe he'd pause, think about it, and say, "Wait, are you okay?" But instead, his expression changed. Something hardened. "What are you talking about?" he said, his voice already sharper. I let out a small breath. "It's Mother's Day," I said quietly, and no one's even mentioned it. Silence. Not the kind that feels thoughtful, the kind that feels tense. My son shifted awkwardly in his seat, glancing between us. And then my husband laughed. Not a kind laugh. Short, dismissive. "Are you serious right now?" I felt my chest tighten. "I'm not asking for anything big," I said. "I just thought—" "You thought what?" He cut in louder now. "That I'm supposed to drop everything and celebrate you?" "That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" He snapped, sitting up straighter now. "Because it sounds like you're making a big deal out of nothing." Nothing. That word hit harder than it should have. "I just wanted a little acknowledgement," I said, trying to stay calm. "That's it." He shook his head, already irritated. "You're not my mother," he said. And just like that, everything stopped. The room, the noise, even my thoughts. "You're not my mother," he repeated, louder this time. "So why would I do anything for you?" I just stood there, not because I didn't have something to say, but because I didn't know where to even begin. Because that sentence, it wasn't just careless. It was revealing, like something I wasn't supposed to hear, but now couldn't unhear. "I didn't say you had to do anything," I said finally, my voice quieter now. "I just thought you might want to," he scoffed. "God, you're being so weird about this." Weird. For wanting to be appreciated. For wanting to be acknowledged. "I do everything around here," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I cook. I clean. Oh, here we go," he cut in again, raising his voice. "Now you're keeping score?" "I'm not keeping score," I said, my voice starting to shake. "I'm just saying it would have been nice." "It's not my responsibility to make you feel special," he snapped. That one landed deep. And suddenly, the argument wasn't really an argument anymore. It felt like something else. Something big, because this wasn't about a day. It wasn't about a card or a comment. It was about what he believed, what he thought I deserved. And standing there, in the middle of our living room, I realized something that made my stomach drop. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was who he was, or at least, who he was becoming. And I didn't know which one scared me more. He told me I was weird, not once, not in passing, but like it was a fact, like it was obvious. "You're being weird about this," he said, shaking his head. "It's just a normal day." A normal day. I felt something twist in my chest. "I'm not being weird," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just thought—" "You thought wrong," he cut in. My son stayed quiet, eyes glued to the screen, pretending not to hear any of it. And for a second, that almost hurt more, because it felt like I was standing there alone, trying to explain something that should have been obvious. "I didn't expect anything big," I said again, softer now. "I just thought maybe you'd say something, that's all." He let out a breath, clearly annoyed. "Why would I?" he said. "You're not my mom." There it was again, that same sentence, like it meant everything to him and nothing to me. I opened my mouth to respond. But then something hit me. A memory. Earlier that morning, him sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, typing something, smiling even. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now, I knew exactly what it was. "You posted about your mom today, didn't you?" I asked. He paused, just for a second, then shrugged. "Yeah, so?" "So," I repeated, my voice tightening. "You had time to write a whole post about how amazing she is." I swallowed. "But you couldn't even look at me and say, 'Happy Mother's Day'?" He rolled his eyes. "Oh my God. Are you seriously comparing yourself to my mom right now?" "I'm not comparing—" "Because that's weird," he said, cutting me off again. "That's actually really weird." Weird. Again. Like I was the problem. Like I was the one making something out of nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was never nothing. "I'm not asking you to compare anything," I said, my voice starting to shake now. "I'm just saying, I'm a mother too." Silence. Not understanding, not empathy, just resistance. "I do everything for this family," I said, quieter now, but more honest than I'd been all day. "I take care of everything. I show up every single day." I looked at him. Really looked at him. And today, I just wanted to feel like that mattered. He didn't respond. He just stared at me like I'd said something completely unreasonable. And that's when it hit me. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just clearly. This wasn't about the post. It wasn't about the words. It was about what those things represented. Because when he posted about his mom, he didn't just say, "Happy Mother's Day." He praised her, tagged her, put her out there for everyone to see. He made sure she felt appreciated. And me? I wasn't even worth a sentence. Not publicly. Not privately. Nothing. And standing there, in that moment, I realized something I'd probably been avoiding for a long time. It wasn't that he forgot. It was that I wasn't a priority. Not really. Maybe I used to be. Maybe at some point, I mattered in a way that showed. But now, I was just there. The one who keeps things running. The one who doesn't need to be thanked. The one who should just understand. And somehow, that hurt more than anything he actually said. The argument didn't stop there. If anything, that's where it really started. He leaned back against the couch, arms crossed, like he was already done with the conversation. "Our son is 17, he said. "He's old enough to do something himself if he wanted to," and I nodded. Because, technically, he was right. "I know that," I said quietly, but my voice felt different now, heavier. "That's not the point." He let out a sharp breath through his nose, already irritated again. "Then what is the point?" he snapped. I hesitated, because the truth wasn't simple. "The point is, you used to care," I said. That made him pause. Just for a second. And I felt it, that shift. Like maybe, just maybe, he heard me. You used to remind him, I continued. You used to make sure I felt appreciated. I swallowed, my throat tightening. It wasn't anything big, just small things. Memories flashed through my mind. A cup of coffee placed in front of me. A lazy Sunday where I didn't have to cook. A quiet, happy Mother's Day as he walked past. That was enough, I said. It always was. Silence. But not the kind that meant he was thinking. The kind that meant he was about to push back. And now what? He said, his tone cold. Now I'm a bad husband because I didn't throw you a parade? That's not what I'm saying. Then stop acting like it is, he cut in, louder now. My chest tightened. I'm not asking for a parade, I said, trying to hold on to whatever calm I had left. I just wanted to feel like it mattered. He shook his head, frustrated. It's just another day, he said. You're the one turning it into something it's not. Something it's not. I let out a small, shaky laugh. Right, I said, because feeling appreciated is asking for too much. That's not what I said. It is, I replied, my voice cracking slightly now, because if it wasn't, this wouldn't even be a conversation. That hit something. I saw it in his face, and instead of softening, he hardened even more. Oh my God, he said, running a hand through his hair. I can't deal with this right now. I felt something inside me start to unravel. Fine, I said quickly. Then don't. The words came out sharper than I expected, and before I could stop myself, I won't bother with your birthday tomorrow either. Silence. For a moment, everything just stopped. I don't even know why I said it. Maybe I wanted him to understand. Maybe I wanted him to feel even a fraction of what I felt. But the way he reacted it wasn't what I expected. He didn't get upset. He didn't argue. He didn't even hesitate. He just shrugged. That's fine, he said flatly. I wasn't expecting anything anyway. That stung. But then he added, not like you have anything to give me. And that broke something. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like a piece of glass cracking under pressure. I felt my throat close up. My chest tighten, because that sentence, it wasn't just an insult, it was a judgment, a dismissal, like everything I had done, everything I do, meant nothing. I didn't argue back. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I just stood there, trying to process how someone who claimed to love me could make me feel so small. And in that moment, I realized something I didn't want to admit. This wasn't just a bad argument. This wasn't just a bad day. This was something deeper, something that had been building for a long time and was finally too big to ignore. Later that night, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. Not the kind that feels peaceful, the kind that feels like something still sitting in the air, unresolved. We hadn't really spoken since the argument. Just small, surface-level things. Dinner's ready. Did you turn the oven off? Nothing real. I remember sitting there, staring at my phone, not even reading anything. Just thinking. And then, without really meaning to, I opened Facebook. And there it was. His post. Still sitting at the top of his profile, a picture of his mom, smiling, happy. And underneath it, a long caption. About how amazing she is. How much he appreciates her. How she's always been there for him. He tagged her. People were commenting. Such a sweet post. You're a great son. She raised you right. And I just sat there, reading it. Over and over again. Because I wasn't trying to compare myself to his mom. I wasn't. But I couldn't ignore what it meant. He knew how to appreciate someone. He knew how to say the words. He knew how to show it. Publicly, effortlessly. Just, not for me. I don't even think he realized how much that hurt. Because it wasn't about the post itself. It was about what it proved. That appreciation wasn't something he struggled with. It was something he chose where to give. And where not to? I must have been staring at my phone for a while, because eventually he noticed. What are you doing? He asked from across the room. I hesitated, then turned the screen toward him. This, I said quietly. He glanced at it for a second, then shrugged. So, That one word, so. Like it didn't mean anything, like I was making it into something bigger than it was. You wrote all of that, I said, my voice calm but tight. You tagged her, you made sure everyone saw it. He looked confused. Yeah, it's Mother's Day. I let out a small breath. And what about me? There was a pause. A real one this time. Not defensive. Not loud. Just uncomfortable. What about you? He said. And that's when it shifted. That's when the conversation stopped being about feelings and started becoming something else. Something colder. Why are you acting like this? He added. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I nodded slowly, because now I understood. This wasn't about him forgetting. This wasn't about him being busy. This was about how he valued things. And somewhere along the way, I had stopped being something worth acknowledging. And then he said it. Not loudly, not angrily, just bluntly. I think you're overreacting because of everything I've already done for you. I looked at him. What does that mean? He sighed, like he didn't even want to explain it. The money, he said, a few months ago, and suddenly, everything clicked into place. The job change, the gap in my salary, the car breaking down, the way he stepped in and said, I've got it, don't worry. At the time, I felt grateful, relieved, safe. But now he was looking at me like that help came with a cost. I helped you when things went wrong, he continued. And now you're acting like I'm not doing enough? I just stared at him, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You offered to help, I said slowly. Yeah, he replied, and I did. There was a pause. And I'm not getting that money back, am I? That was it. That was the moment. Not loud, not explosive, but final. Because suddenly, everything we had built together felt like a transaction. And I couldn't stop the thought from creeping in, are we even partners anymore, or had we become something else entirely? Because in our early years, when he had nothing, I was there. I helped him build his business from the ground up. I handled his accounts, his invoices, his taxes. I still do, every single day, for free, not because I had to, but because I believed we were a team. That what was his was ours, and what was mine was his. But now it felt like we were keeping score. Like every act of support came with a price tag. Like love had been replaced with calculation. And sitting there, in that quiet room, I realized something that hit harder than anything else that day. It wasn't just that he didn't appreciate me. It was that somewhere along the way, he had stopped valuing me altogether. That night, I didn't cry. Not right away. Which was strange, because normally I would have. Normally, I would have tried to fix it, talk it out, smooth things over. But this time, I just sat there, quiet, thinking, because something felt different. Not just the argument, not just what he said, but what it meant. I went upstairs eventually. The house was dark, still. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at nothing in particular, and that's when the memories started coming back. Not all at once, just little pieces. Mother's Day, a few years ago. I remember waking up to the smell of coffee, walking downstairs to find a mug already waiting for me. He had smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said, Happy Mother's Day. Nothing fancy. No gifts. Just warmth. Another year, we ordered takeout. I didn't have to cook, didn't have to clean. We just sat together on the couch, watching something mindless, laughing. And I remember thinking, this is enough. It always was. I never needed more than that. Just acknowledgement. Just knowing I mattered. But then I kept thinking about the last few years. How things had slowly changed. Subtly. Quietly. At first, it was just little things. He stopped reminding our son. Stopped planning anything. Then it became less conversation. Less effort. Less everything. And I told myself it was normal. People get busy. Life gets stressful. Relationships go through phases. That's what I believed. That's what I wanted to believe. But sitting there, in the dark, I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't just a bad day. This was a pattern, a slow shift that I had been watching happen and convincing myself didn't matter. Until now. Until it all came to the surface at once. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and one thought kept repeating in my head. When did I become invisible? Not unloved, not completely, but unseen, like I was just part of the background, expected, reliable, but not valued. And that's when I knew. I couldn't keep pretending this was okay. I couldn't keep shrinking myself just to keep the peace, because if I did, this would just keep happening. Again, and again, and again. So, when he came into the room later, I sat up, took a breath, and for the first time that day, I didn't feel emotional. I felt clear. This isn't okay, I said. My voice was steady, calm, but firm. He looked at me, surprised. What isn't? Everything, I said. The way you spoke to me, the way you treated me, the way you've been treating me. He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't let him interrupt this time. I'm not going to keep doing this, I continued. I'm not going to keep feeling like I don't matter. There was a pause, a real one, and for once, he didn't argue. I think you need help, I said, not as an insult, not as an attack, just the truth, because this isn't normal, and it's not okay. He looked away, ran a hand through his hair, and after a long moment, he nodded. Slowly. Yeah, I know. That was the first time all day. He actually sounded human again. Not defensive, not angry, just tired. I'll look into it, he said. And I studied his face, trying to figure out if he meant it, if this was real, or just another thing he was saying to end the conversation. So I gave him a timeline. 1 week, I said. He frowned slightly. To do what? To find someone, book an appointment, show me that you actually want to fix this. Silence. Then another nod. Okay. And I wish I could say I felt relieved. Hopeful. But I didn't, because even though I still loved him, something had shifted. Something I couldn't undo. And as I lay back down that night, one thought stayed with me. Not angry. Not loud. Just certain. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life feeling invisible. 2 years later, you'd think things would be better, and in some ways, they were. We didn't fight like that anymore. Not loudly, not explosively. Life felt smoother. We had routines again. We talked. We laughed sometimes. On the surface, everything looked normal. Maybe even good. But I learned something over those 2 years. Problems don't always disappear. Sometimes, they just go quiet. It was a random evening. Nothing special. We were in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. The TV was on in the background. Some noise to fill the silence. We weren't arguing. We weren't even tense, just existing in the same space. And for a moment, I let myself believe, maybe we're okay now. I don't even remember what started it. Something small, a comment, a tone. Maybe I asked him for help with something. Or maybe I said something he didn't like. It doesn't matter. Because what I remember is how fast it shifted. 1 second, it was nothing. The next, it wasn't. He sighed. That same sigh I'd heard before. Frustrated, dismissive. And I felt it instantly, that familiar tightening in my chest. Can you just not right now? He said. I froze slightly. What? I've had a long day, he added, not even looking at me. I'm just asking for help, I said carefully. And I'm saying I don't want to deal with this, he replied. The words weren't loud, but they weren't gentle either. They had that edge, that same edge. And suddenly, I wasn't standing in the kitchen anymore. I was back there. That day, that argument, that feeling. I'm not trying to start anything, I said quietly. I just thought, that's the problem, he cut in. You always think it's something bigger than it is. I felt my throat tighten, because I'd heard that before too. Different words, same meaning. You're overreacting. You're making it a big deal. It's nothing. I nodded slowly, tried to let it go, tried to keep the peace, because that's what I'd learned to do. But then he said it. Not yelling. Not even angry. Just flat, like a fact. Honestly, it's not like you have anything to give me anyway. Silence. The kind that fills the entire room. The kind that makes everything feel distant. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because something inside me just collapsed. Not outwardly, not in a way anyone else would notice, but internally, it felt like everything just stopped. Because it wasn't just what he said, it was how easily he said it. Like it had been sitting there all along, waiting. I stared at the counter, at my hands, at anything that wasn't him, trying to process it, trying to understand how someone who shared a life with me could reduce me to that. Nothing to give. After everything, the years, the effort, the support, the parts of myself I had poured into this life, into him. And the worst part? He didn't even realize what he'd done. He just went back to what he was doing, like the moment had already passed, like it didn't matter. But it did, because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully accepted before. It wasn't just one bad day. It wasn't just one argument. It wasn't even just about Mother's Day anymore. It was about how he saw me, at my core, and no matter how quiet things had been over the last 2 years, that truth had never really changed. In 5 years, we had taken one vacation together. One. And even that felt rushed, like something squeezed in between responsibilities. I told myself it was fine. He was busy. He had a business. We had responsibilities. That's what relationships are, right? Compromise, understanding, patience. But then one evening, he brought it up, casually, like it wasn't a big deal. I'm thinking about going to France this summer, he said, scrolling through something on his phone. I looked up, France? Yeah, he nodded. Just for a week. Go see my friend. Do some riding. A week. I let that sit for a second. And? We're going together? I asked. He didn't even hesitate. No. Just me. Something in my chest shifted. Not sharp. Not sudden. Just familiar. Oh, I said quietly. He kept talking, explaining the trip, the timing, how it would work, like I was just listening, not part of it. And I waited. I waited for him to say, but we can plan something together too. But we'll go somewhere after. Something. Anything. But it never came. So I asked, when are we going on holiday together? That made him pause. Just for a second. Then he shrugged. I don't know. Maybe in a couple of years. A couple of years. I felt the words land slowly, like they needed time to fully settle. A couple of years? I repeated. Yeah, he said casually. You know how busy things are. Busy. Right. I nodded, trying to process it, trying not to react too quickly. But there was this pressure building inside me now. That same feeling from before, that quiet realization, starting to get louder. You can take a week off to see your friend? I said carefully. But we can't take a week off together? That's not what I said, he replied, already defensive. It kind of is, I said. He sighed. I don't see him that often, he said. He lives in another country. And I live with you, I said softly. That landed. I saw it, just for a moment. But instead of leaning into it, he pulled back. That's different, he said. How? He hesitated, then shrugged again. It just is. And there it was. That same wall, that same distance, the same feeling I had 2 years ago, creeping back in, not being chosen, not being prioritized. I just don't understand, I said. I do everything with you, for you, around you. That wasn't an accusation, it was just the truth. I've been patient, I continued. I've supported your schedule, your business, everything. I looked at him. And when you finally have time, you don't want to spend it with me? He rubbed his face, clearly frustrated now. Why are you making this into something it's not? He said. There it was again. That phrase, that dismissal. It's not a big deal, he added. Not a big deal. I felt a small, almost bitter laugh escape me. Of course it's not, I said quietly. Because it's not happening to you. He didn't respond. And for a moment, we just stood there, in silence. But it wasn't empty, it was heavy, full of everything that hadn't been said for years. And suddenly, it wasn't about the trip anymore. It wasn't about France, or his friend, or even the timing. It was about what the choice represented. Because when he had 1 week to give, he didn't choose me. And standing there, in that moment, I realized something I had been trying to ignore. Love isn't just about staying. It's about choosing, over and over again, in small ways, in quiet moments, in decisions that no one else sees. And somehow, I kept choosing him, but he didn't seem to be choosing me back. And that's when it hit me. Not all at once, not like some dramatic realization, but slowly, clearly, like something I'd always known, finally becoming impossible to ignore. Was this ever really about Mother's Day? Or was that just the moment? Everything I'd been pushing down for years finally came to the surface. Because it wasn't just one argument, it wasn't just one comment, it was a pattern. A quiet, consistent pattern of being overlooked, deprioritized, taken for granted. And I was tired, not angry, not even sad anymore, just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. The kind that comes from carrying something too long without ever putting it down. We were standing in the kitchen again, same place, different day, but it felt exactly the same. He was saying something, explaining himself, maybe, trying to justify the trip, trying to make it sound reasonable. But I wasn't really listening anymore, because for the first time, I wasn't focused on understanding him. I was focused on understanding myself. And what I realized was simple. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep explaining why I deserved the bare minimum. I couldn't keep shrinking my needs just to make the relationship easier for him. So I interrupted him. Not loudly, not aggressively, just firmly. Stop. He paused, looked at me slightly confused. What? I took a breath, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel emotional. I felt clear. I'm not doing this anymore, I said. He frowned. Doing what? This, I replied, explaining to you why I should matter. Silence. Real silence. The kind that forces someone to actually listen. I'm exhausted, I continued. My voice didn't shake, it didn't break, it just was. I'm exhausted from trying to be understood by someone who doesn't even try to understand me. He opened his mouth, but I didn't stop. Every time something like this happens, I said, I tell myself it's not a big deal, that I'm overreacting, that it's just a bad day. I shook my head slightly. But it's not just a bad day, it's a pattern. That word hung between us, pattern. You don't choose me, I said. Not accusing, just stating it. Not in the small moments, not in the big ones. He looked away, uncomfortable, but I didn't soften this time. I'm not asking for perfection, I continued. I'm asking for effort, consistent effort, a pause. Then I added, and if that's not something you can give me, then I need to know that. That got his attention. He looked back at me. What are you saying? I held his gaze. I'm saying something has to change. My voice dropped slightly. Because I can't keep living like this. Another pause. Longer this time. He didn't interrupt, didn't argue, didn't deflect. So I said, the part I had been holding back, I think you need help. His expression shifted. Not angry, just guarded. I'm serious, I said, because this how you see things, how you treat me, it's not normal, and it's not healthy. He ran a hand through his hair, looked down, then back at me. And if I don't? He asked quietly. That question sat there, heavy, but I didn't avoid it, I didn't soften it, because I already knew the answer. Then I'll have to make a decision for myself, I said. No anger, no threat, just truth. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it felt different. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking him to change. I was telling him what I needed, and what I wouldn't accept anymore, and whether he chose to meet me there or not. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to keep choosing someone who didn't choose me back. Eventually, things calmed down. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly. He read what other people had to say, really read it. And for the first time in a long time, he admitted it. I was wrong. Simple words, but they mattered. We talked. Not like before. Not defensive. Not reactive. Just talked. About everything. How we got here. What went wrong. What we both needed. We made plans. Small ones at first. A weekend away. Then something bigger. Trips we kept putting off. Finally written down on a calendar. It felt like progress. Like maybe we had caught something just in time. And on the surface, everything looked better. We laughed more. Spent time together again. There were no more shouting matches. No more explosive arguments. Life felt stable, even peaceful. But peace can be misleading. Because sometimes it's not that the storm is gone. It's just past for now. 2 years later, we were still together, still functioning, still us. But there was something different. Not visible, not obvious. Just there, like a quiet awareness I couldn't turn off. I started noticing things I used to ignore. The pauses in conversation, the moments where effort felt uneven, the way I would wait just for something small and sometimes still get nothing. We didn't fight about it anymore. That was the strange part, because on the outside, that looks like growth, like maturity, like things are fixed. But sometimes, not fighting just means you've stopped expecting. And I hated that thought, because I didn't want to believe that I had slowly adjusted to feeling less seen, less chosen, less important. We still planned things, still talked about the future, still functioned like a couple who had worked things out, but deep down, there was this quiet question that never fully went away. Is this better, or is this just quieter? Because something inside me had shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would notice, but enough that I could feel it. That part of me that used to wait, hope, expect, was more cautious now, more aware, more guarded. And even though things looked okay again, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't really fixed the problem. We had just learned how to live around it. Because it happened again. Not the same way, not as loud, but just as clear. It was supposed to be a normal conversation. We were sitting on the couch, half watching something neither of us really cared about. He was scrolling through his phone. I was just there, next to him, present, waiting, without even realizing I was waiting. I think I'm going to book it, he said suddenly. I looked over. Book what? The trip, he replied. France. Flights are cheaper right now. There it was again. That same feeling. Quiet. Familiar. Like déjà vu. Oh, I said. I waited. Just for a second. For him to follow it up with, we should plan something too. Let's go somewhere together after. Something. Anything. But he didn't. He just kept scrolling. Already moving on. Like the decision had been made, and I wasn't part of it. When are we going somewhere? I asked. My voice wasn't emotional. It wasn't confrontational. It was just honest. He didn't even look up. We've talked about this, he said. I'm busy. Maybe next year, or the year after. Next year, or the year after. I let out a small breath. Not sharp, not dramatic, just tired. You have time for this, I said quietly, but not for us? That made him pause. Finally, he looked at me. It's not like that. Then what is it like? I asked. He shrugged. I don't see him that often. And I nodded, because I understood that. I really did. But understanding something doesn't make it hurt less. And you see me every day, I said. Exactly, he replied, like that explained everything. And in a way, it did, because in that moment, I understood something I had been trying not to. Familiarity had made me optional. Something constant, something guaranteed, something he didn't have to choose anymore. We didn't argue. Not this time. There was no shouting, no explosion. Just silence. Heavy, quiet, clarity. Because the truth is, it wasn't about France. It wasn't about his friend. It wasn't even about the trip. It was about the choice. Because when he had something to give time, energy, attention, he didn't give it to me. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Once you feel what it's like to not be someone's priority, every moment after that feels different. Every decision, every silence, every maybe later. So now, I'm left with a question. Not just for myself, but for anyone listening. If someone says they love you, but keeps choosing everything else over you, how long do you stay? If someone says they love you, but their actions keep telling you otherwise, how long do you stay? Because love isn't just words. It's not what someone says when things are calm, when it's easy, when there's nothing at stake. Love shows up in the small moments, in the effort, in the choices no one else sees, in the quiet decisions that say, you matter. And I kept telling myself he loved me. For years, I held on to that, used it to explain everything, to justify the silence, the distance, the moments where I felt invisible, because it's easier to believe in love than to admit you're not being chosen. But there's a difference between being loved and being valued, between being there and being seen. And once you realize that, once you feel the difference, you can't go back. You can't pretend it's enough. You can't unknow what it feels like to be an option instead of a priority. So now I sit with that question, not angry, not even heartbroken, just clear. Because at some point, you have to stop asking whether they love you and start asking, is this the kind of love I'm willing to live with? And maybe the harder question is this. If nothing changes, if this is exactly how it stays, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, would you still choose this? Or would you finally choose yourself?